All right, and now we're on to a video about the slides and the answer docs. So to start off with, in our first week 6, we have periodic table slides, and then we have day 2. So on our periodic table slides, you have the original slideshow that we're using for this whole week to collect information to go with our learning target on the periodic table so we can understand properties of elements. Now, in class, you are receiving 2 answer documents that help us collect notes. We could also call these a note catcher, some classes do, to collect information from these slides. If you are absent or you lose yours, there is a copy here on your Google Classroom. However, if you are in class, it is much easier to just have the paper next to you and the slideshow up in front. If you are finding this easy and want to stop the video to answer the questions on your own, you can do that, but I just want to make sure that you know I will be reading the slides in case it is better for your learning style to listen to the text instead of read it. No matter which way you choose to complete this, I want you to know the way this document works is that the slide number is listed in the column to the left, and the questions that you need to answer are in the larger of the 2 columns. The slide tells you exactly where the answer comes from for the question. I also know that on the slides themselves, it can get confusing because there are sticky note pictures with questions. Some of those questions are similar to what you'll be answering in class, and some are not. The directions for you are to only answer the questions on this paper. You do not have to answer the questions on the slides. If you would like to write on the slides or answer anything or take notes on them, all you have to do is go up to the File tab in the upper left, and you can click Make a Copy. You can copy the entire presentation or selected slides, and once you have a copy, you'll be able to highlight on it or type on it, anything like that, you should. All right. So if you have your paper in front of you, we're going to kind of look through these first couple. So this is our title slide that we have been working off of. You should have by now colored and labeled completely the periodic table. Slide 2. The question on your paper for slide 2 says, what is an element? So your job is to read through this slide and look for an answer to that question. I see up here it is listed as a vocabulary word, and then I see some examples of elements. The paragraph says, the elements. Some substances can be broken down into other substances. Water can be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen. Sugar can be broken down into carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Salt can be broken down into sodium and chlorine. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, sodium, and chlorine cannot be broken down. These substances are called elements. Elements are substances that cannot be broken down into anything else, like atoms. So that is your slide 2. You may pause the video to write your answers or continue ahead. Slide 3. So once again, it does help if you look at your paper and know what the questions are for slide 3 so that you know what you are listening for. In slide 3, the question says, in what phase of matter are most elements found? Okay, in what phase of matter? Solid, liquid, or gas? And the next question says, what are 2 examples of a substance that is composed of only one element? So you're looking for those 2 pieces of information. Here is slide 3. There are over 100 elements that we know of. Every substance on Earth is made of one or more of these elements. Elements are simple substances. They are the building blocks of all other substances. Elements can be solids, liquids, or gases. Most elements are solid at ordinary or room temperatures. Some elements are gases. A few are liquids. Some substances are composed of only one element. An iron nail contains only the element iron. Aluminum foil is composed of only the element aluminum. The lead in the pencil you write is not really lead at all, it is graphite. Graphite is composed of the element carbon. So once again, you can stop here at slide 3 and answer questions or continue ahead. Slide 4. So for slide 4, we are looking for what 3 elements make up sugar and what 2 elements is mercuric oxide composed of. Some substances contain more than one element. Water is composed of the 2 elements of hydrogen and oxygen. Sugar contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Brass is a mixture of the elements copper and zinc. Mercuric oxide contains the elements mercury and oxygen. It is not hard to break mercuric oxide into its 2 elements. We would heat some up into a test tube, and it would turn black. We would keep heating it, then drops of silver-colored liquid form on the inside of the test tube. This liquid is the element mercury. If you then put a glowing wood splint into the test tube, the splint would burst into a flame. This shows that the test tube also contains invisible gas oxygen. Oxygen can make a glowing wood splint burst into flame. And that is slide 4. Slide 5 is listing what you have learned. You have learned, number 1, all substances are made of elements. Number 2, an element is a simple substance that cannot be broken down into other substances. And number 3, there are more than 100 known elements. Slide 6. So you can see on slide 6 on your paper that it says, write the answers to the questions here. So you can see the questions on the slide. You just need to write the answers to the numbers on your paper. Slide 7. Again, referencing questions, we are looking for the first and last name of the scientist on this slide, and we are looking for what data did he record about each element. So the title of this slide is a scientist's name. His name is Dmitry Mendeleev. And we can see here we're going to run into about 4 vocabulary words as we move through this section. Dmitry Mendeleev. Scientists have been studying elements for many years. In 1869, 63 elements had been discovered. Most of the elements were solid metals, but there were some liquids and a few gases. Dmitry Mendeleev was a Russian chemist who began studying elements during this time period. As Mendeleev was studying the elements, he began to notice they had certain characteristics in common with one another. Mendeleev began examining these similarities to see if there was a pattern. Like a true scientist, Mendeleev began recording data about each element. He started to record the melting point, density, color, and atomic mass. The atomic mass, if you remember from your notes, is the total number of protons and neutrons in an element's nucleus. Each of these recordings were written on a card, and Dmitry began to organize them into a pattern. While organizing them based on their properties, Mendeleev noticed that in his arrangements, these elements were being organized in order by their atomic mass. Arranging them by their atomic mass, he also noticed that the elements shared the same properties. He grouped these elements together and began to notice a pattern among the atomic mass and the properties that the elements shared. So that was slide 8. So again, you can pause to reread and answer questions or continue to slide 9. Here is slide 9. It is the last question on the front side of page 1. The question for slide 9 is, what property do we organize this periodic table by today? The periodic table. In 1869, Mendeleev created the first periodic table of elements. The word periodic means in a regular, repeated pattern. The periodic table is a table that organizes the elements based on shared properties. As time went on and more scientists began studying elements, the original table was tweaked as more information was learned. When organizing the table, Mendeleev left blank spaces in it. Based on his organization of the elements, he predicted that there were elements on Earth that had not yet been discovered. As new elements were discovered, scientists were able to fit them into the blank spaces on the table. Scientists were able to predict how the element would react with other elements because of what they already knew about the periodic table. Today, scientists have realized that the periodic table is organized by an element's atomic number. The atomic number is the number of protons in the nucleus. Modern periodic tables are organized in this fashion. The atomic number determines what chemical properties of an element. So again, we have a summary slide. We have number 1, we have learned that Dmitry Mendeleev was the first scientist to organize the periodic table of elements. And number 2, the periodic table is a table that organizes elements by their atomic number, which is the number of protons. This is slide 11. There are 2 questions here on your paper. It is the top of the back of page 1. It only asks you to answer questions number 1 and number 2. You do not have to answer number 3. When you are finished with this, you will be moving on to slide 12 about chemical symbols. I'm going to stop the video now and allow you to read and find the rest of the information on your own. When you are finished with page 1, you are to come up and I will give you page 2 to staple together for a complete set of notes.